Welcome back to the Manifest Your Success podcast, where we break down what it means to be successful, share the accomplishments, failures, and perspectives of individuals on entrepreneurship, business, and self-improvement.
3, 2, 1.
All right, we are joined again by John Bianchi. Check out the previous episode where we had a great conversation with him about AI, social marketing, and even a little bit of martial arts in there, which is pretty cool. And we're now joined also with his friend Isaac. So it's good to have you guys on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's awesome to be here, guys.
Yeah, so John, you already kind of got a good intro to the podcast for anyone listening. So Isaac, I guess it's your turn to kind of dive in. So what are you doing now as far as like a career, and maybe what have you done to kind of lead you up to that point?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. I appreciate being on the podcast. So I'm a local Raleigh native. I was born and raised here, and grew up in the we call it the Bible Belt in the South, but started out in SaaS technology sales at Citrix. Before that, I was working at a subsidiary. I'm doing cold calls, about 200 cold calls a day, and worked my way through the ranks, got promoted to Citrix, no college degree, traveled abroad instead, went to Africa, Mozambique, Amazon jungle in Brazil, and just found a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction in that before I came back. And so when I was at Citrix, that's where I met my friend Adam Manka, which ultimately led me to John here. And 200 to 300 cold calls a day can potentially burn you out if you're not careful, right? Because you're testing your resolve when it comes to your ability to either be rejected on a consistent basis or learn how to talk to people. So I learned both, and that gave me a really good understanding of how to navigate conversations when it comes to sales, positioning. Now what I do is more on the consulting side, but I had to have those foundational skills leading up to the consulting, or else I wouldn't be able to navigate the conversations in the way that are permeable for the market today. So I heard about Bitcoin in 2017 and it fascinated me, read Satoshi's white paper, which is the founder of Bitcoin. Nobody knows who it is, or it might be a bunch of people, it might be a group, might be a female in South Korea somewhere in her basement. We don't know. It could be anybody, right? But I was instantly hooked. I mean, the idea of taking power away from centralized authorities who told me where I could put my money and how much I could take out at a given time out of my own bank account really frustrated and bothered me. And so I decided to say, how do I get involved in an innovative technology like blockchain and cryptocurrency in a way that could not only pave a way or a path for me, but also the upcoming youth of today who are either in university or studying a trade or interested in technology? How do I provide a pathway for them to get into the space the right way? Because a lot of institutions when I got into crypto had no education. They had no idea how to train young people coming up in this space. So for me, it was more about not only advocacy of educating people in blockchain and crypto, but it was to get them involved. So I started working at the Blockchain Center in Miami, Bitcoin Center in New York City, and helped to run Zap Protocol, which was the highest performing altcoin, as we call it, of 2019. We saw a 40,000% increase in price, and was the highest performing digital asset at the time. And so that was a huge accomplishment. Ended up running hackathons in Miami, did some work with Adam at the time, and then moved back to Raleigh, started doing some companies here, exited those companies, and now what I primarily do, and the reason John and I are connected, is we're kind of creating a coalition of like-minded individuals that have certain talents and skill sets to be able to have a full circle approach to a client, whether that's marketing, consulting, development services. So if we can come in and say, hey, we have a laundry list of services that we can provide to you, we're not only going to provide those services, we're going to educate you in the process, which a lot of companies don't do nowadays. They say they do a hope and a prayer of, hey, we're going to get you this many followers on Twitter, or actually we're just going to spend $5 and do a bot and just frustrate the heck out of you, right? And so that's what John's really good at, is the branding, positioning, social engineering side of it. And then he comes to me, it's like, Isaac, how do we build the tech into this? So what I do is I architect it, and then I give it to my guys who are really, really good at like DevOps, build, operate, transfer mechanisms. And then .py is one of the initiatives that we're running, which, Sam, you're familiar with, is the Developer Onboarding, Training, and Placement Initiative in North Carolina. we want to get local developer talent either through hackathons or in general to be able to be incubated into a process where they ultimately get trained and then placed within either Fortune 500 companies, local tech startups, or they're like, screw that, I don't want to go into the corporate side, I want to stick in the blockchain. We then get them into a crypto company or they work for us. We're probably going to steal and keep the top talent for ourselves because we're selfish, but that's kind of a little bit of my ethos and background, I guess. I do a lot of things. Consulting at a high level and architecture tokenomics, and I just joined as an advisor to a project called Energy, which I'm super proud of, and they're a great project. Check them out.
Yeah, I think a lot to break down there. I guess we can kind of move through it a little bit at a time. But you kind of said you went to Mozambique, and then you went to the Amazon rainforest. And John, you can kind of touch on this too. What do you guys think it's like how important is it for people to take that time off to go abroad and like gain new experiences and get that fulfillment, like you said? Yeah,
mental health is super important to me. I saw the effect that overworking yourself had without a break. It has longer, because when you're young, you think you're invincible, right? You think I can work 80 hours, 100 hours a week. Nothing's bad's going to happen to me. I'm invincible. But at the end of the day, when you are 40 years old, you have no family, you have $2 million in the bank account, and you're sitting on your couch drinking a glass of wine watching Dr. Phil, you're really, really...
Or you're on Dr. Phil.
You probably have to be like 45 for that. But you take stock of your life and you look back at it and you say, as a man specifically, I can't speak for women, but as a man, my number one question is legacy. That's way more important to me than having $2 million in the bank. If I can have both, great. But I learned very quickly the balance of personal and professional needs to be there. Whether it's understanding, hey, I need to take an hour and just get out of the office and take a walk and get some fresh air, or go out to coffee with a buddy of mine and catch up with him and see how he's doing. That was really important to me. So when I traveled abroad, I saw, hey, not only can I do business applications with local tribes and indigenous groups and help them get out of the poverty cycle they seem to be in and teach them how to fish instead of just giving them fish, I saw that paired really well with fulfillment for me as an individual outside of a business, but I can bring a business acumen to that. And so if you're not finding fulfillment in what you do, I'd question that you really love it, right? That's the way I look at life now. If I had that same mentality when I was 19 or 20 and I was in university, for example, I would be way further along now than what I was. So that's I guess the question you asked was, it's very important to understand legacy, goals, and pairing those two together, and those can't be silos in and of themselves. They have to be conjunctual with each other, or else you're going to be old on your deathbed and there's not going to be anybody around you.
If I can add to that too, I think what's interesting is you talk about wanting to travel. I'll give a kind of a positive addition to that. When you get out of your comfort zone or get out of where your early childhood development, growth, whatever it is, you begin to see other perspectives. And a lot of times travel can help you do that and have a self-reflection on where you're at and what's important to you and what you want to do next in your life. So I don't just tell people to travel just to travel, like have a purpose. Why are you going to this place? What do you want to do to either impact change, or if you really just want to change your perspectives, you can just go to another city in the United States, or you could just go to some place close by that at least changes that perspective. But that's highly valuable, especially when you're in a creative mode. And like we were talking this morning, and Isaac makes a really good point. Like sometimes just go out to coffee with somebody that's not in business with you, doesn't have any connection to your projects, get a different perspective from them, or even call them and ask them a question. So I do this all the time with a good mentor of mine. I mean, she is not involved in any blockchain stuff. I don't even think she thinks that it's like the future, which is fine. That's okay. I'm just going to get a bunch of Bitcoins and send it to her. But like, I just call her and ask her something about business or ask her about her day or what's going on. And she can give me a totally different perspective as a mentor on something that I might not have even have considered. So a lot of times when you are saying, hey, should I travel abroad? How do I change my perspectives? Is it good to do this? I think like Isaac said, it's important to have a goal behind that. Sometimes it's also important to step back and say, all right, what am I missing from these situations? What can I gain from a perspective of knowledge that somebody else might have? And don't always seek mentorship or information from people that are in the same arena as you. If you get advice from people totally on the outside, even in your interpersonal relationships, man, that can be fascinating. You can pull something out that you would not even have thought of that can relate to where you are in your business and career in some way that you would never even consider, because you're having a conversation that's so different than the same process-related conversations that you might have. So I think it's great to travel. Obviously, do it with intent. But also, understand that the reason why you're collecting these experiences is to have a more, I don't want to say rounded, because I see it almost as like mirrors and glass, have more visibility of that prism that you're trying to create, which is going to help you make better decisions and understand where those colors fit in on the prism.
Yeah, I love both of those responses, really. There's a lot to gain out of both of that. I love what you said about like reaching out to someone that's not even like in your circle, your connect. And like you mentioned, like the benefits of just gaining another perspective because you don't know them that well and they have a whole different circle. But there's also the side of it where it's like, okay, that's a whole nother network of people. Like,
sure,
if you connect with that person and they have 10 different connects that you don't know about, that's a whole nother connection, people, where, okay, you can talk to 10 other people just from talking to that one person and taking that risk going out there.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times when we're creating, when we're working, and Isaac and I know this, we can spend almost every day together. We could be working on projects, texting each other. You only have a finite amount of time. So it's great to build great teams. And obviously you want to find great individuals to work with, great projects to work with, and go deep with the projects and spend time instead of just trying to spread yourself out thin and not really affecting any change or giving value. But a lot of times, in addition to that, I find, especially either on social media, I find this on Twitter a lot. I'll interact with people that I have never met or don't know, and I'll try to find what's important to them, and like you said, build that network and exchange ideas. A lot of people do networking or try to network with, and it's this whole thing of like, intent-based networking. Like, there's got to be a reason. I have no problem with that. Obviously, you want to be, maximizing and valuable with your time. But I never go in to try to have a new conversation with someone thinking through exactly what I want to get from that individual or those other 10 contacts, because you might miss and lose those opportunities. Yeah, if I'm going to go out and do prospecting and we're going to make calls or we're going to reach out to someone, there's a specific intent of why I've emailed that individual or picked up that phone. But when you're out at an event or, some area that's maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone, don't go in there with an intent. Just try to ask questions. Find out and learn what's important from someone. I had a great conversation about philosophy last week while I was in Austin, obviously for the intent of growing our business there, with somebody that, I don't know that we'll ever necessarily work together on a project. He's doing just something totally different than we're interested in. But the conversation we had just on philosophy and interpersonal relationships led me down another path that I actually was really thinking about, that helped me with a conversation I was having with one of my team members. Just the thinking through how to think differently with their perspective. So you never know how that's going to come back, and getting more knowledge and more visibility gives you the ability to have more clarity in your decision making, which is really key.
Yeah, I think also if you go into if you go up to network with someone with the intention of having a specific reason, you might miss out on or misjudge someone. You say, hey, this person, I don't know, I don't see any reason why I should go talk to them, why I should go form a relationship with them. It's very easy to misjudge that when, if you actually make that connection, there could be an amazing reason that you talk to them or you form a relationship, and next thing you know, you're business partners. But if you go into that thinking, I'll pass on this one, then you might miss that.
Absolutely. And I want you to jump in on this. I'll add one point here. I have, in the last 2 years, realized, and this is, again, something you can only realize when you're on the other side of it, when you're involved in a situation and things don't always go the way you want them to go, or you're not really realizing at the time that the experience you're gaining is going to be valuable for something in the future, because you just don't know that. Over the last year and a half, 2 years, I have had more almost deja vu moments of realizing this is why something happened in the past. And as we're building this, new organization and this new collective, obviously, with Isaac, I will just go back to saying a couple of different things. Adam and I, our buddy, we met 5-something years ago. Random encounter, filed it in the back of my mind. Never really thought that through that much. Knew we were still, we were Bitcoin guys. 5 years later, I show up at the center here in Raleigh, and it's like there hasn't been a day that's passed. We're like on the same track. That happened 6 times on my trip in Austin, including reconnecting with guys that I was friends with in my freshman year of college, who Bitcoin didn't exist back then. But this track was we were getting the guy who I was out there in Austin with was like, how do you know everybody? I was like, because the community's not that big. I just didn't know that we had all tracked along the same lines. And now I started seeing all the pieces come together, and the experience that I had in building an agency previously, the mistakes I made on last night on a call, I was having a conversation with our head of design, and because I had conversations previously with somebody with the exact same similar personality, I knew what to say and not to say, and I got a completely different result from talking with him on the phone, and he was so excited, and I could see, whoa, that's how you put into place the experience that you have. And maybe that's kind of, we talk about this all the time, having wisdom in your decision making comes from experience, but the application of that in your decision making, your team building. So, for the younger listeners, I would say you may go through things in your life, in your career. A lot of us ask, why is this happening to me? What am I supposed to gain out of this? And at the time, it may actually be a net zero. Like, you may not feel like you actually moved the ball down the field with this experience, but you don't know 10 years later that simple piece that you either were a part of or this process or something comes into play. You take it out, you put it into the puzzle in the right way, and all of a sudden that bridge gets you so much farther down the field. And it could be a simple set of words or just a change in something that you do or say that gets you a result because you have that experience. So don't, there's a good verse in the Bible. It's like, don't look down on small beginnings. I'm kind of paraphrasing it there, but basically look at those small moments and understand they do have a purpose that you can build on in the future. And for me, that's been invaluable to really take that time, think through, and say, what would I do in this situation, and lean on some of that experience that I had and I acquired. Some of it coming at me, some of it that I was involved in, but putting that and packaging that together. And I think that's true wisdom, is the application of your experience in the right way to achieve better results.
Yeah, I think very simply, for me, it's about living a prepared life. So honesty is very disarming in business and in interpersonal relationships with people. If you can be honest and have integrity, you already won. If they see it or not yet, it's not really up to you, because you don't define other people's destinies. I don't, right? And I'll give a tidbit that I've learned that's really helped me. When you walk into a room, everybody's automatically sizing you up. I don't care how big, small, wide you are. Maybe if you're really wide, they'll size you up a little bit more. But that's a different conversation.
Yeah, we're not gonna go down that path, right?
Yeah, no. Canceled. So everybody's sizing you up because, whether it's subconsciously or not, they're trying to see what you can bring to the table, and they're going to test you immediately. Whether it's questions, whether it's dialogue, whether it's eye contact, whether it's and this is in business in general. One skill that I've learned, I'll give you 2 skills. Skill number 1, don't always be the one that speaks the most. Have a mentality, because it's social engineering says, or even society says, I need to talk to seem valuable or important. The less you talk and the more you listen and ask good questions, you will win. Right? If the outcome is the outcome side that John was talking about, and I learned this from a mentor, every conversation or interaction that you go to, if the goal is to bring value, you win. If I can bring value to every single conversation, and value looks like multiple different facets, asking good questions, not appearing that you know everything, having integrity in the way you ask questions, wanting to build a bridge to something that could help your client or potential client. And even if it's not a potential client, that potential client could lead to someone else or that relationship could lead to someone else.
Absolutely.
So you never know who you're going to meet, and always having your guard up of saying, this person that I'm talking to has a motive behind why they're talking to me. Especially in consulting, if you're on a call with somebody and they're like, well, why are they meeting with me a second time? Obviously, they have an agenda behind why they're meeting with me. They would not pick up the phone and meet with me again if they didn't have something they wanted. Now the question becomes, how do we get that out of them? How do we figure out what they want? It's asking really good questions, open-ended questions that don't close you off from getting the response, but you're leading them down what I call the yellow brick road to their own conclusion. It's not taking advantage of them. It's saying, okay, Mr. Prospect or Mrs. Prospect, how do we go down the road together and position you and I to both win? How do we both win? Because if I win and you lose, we both lose, in my opinion. Because if my networking connections or clients are not happy, then it's a direct reflection of how I approach the sale or I approach that relationship. So every encounter that you have is an opportunity to be better. If you don't see it that way, then it's lack of void and purpose, specifically in building value and building community, especially probably at NC State for you guys, is how do we build community in a local area of a very innovative field of technology or of business acumen or networking. I say all the time, just be real. Like, people can sniff out BS so quick, especially today. I call it the sniff tester, where that you can be on a call and they're like, oh, this guy just seems like he's BSing me. Mm-hmm. He's saying all the right things. He's smooth talker, as smooth as butter. Like he says something and he almost falls off the table. He's so smooth, but he's so arrogant. Like, when he opens his mouth, it's like hearing Mrs. Minushik from your 5th grade class is like taking her nails and just like scratching it across the chalkboard, dude. And that's just it's obnoxious to me. So.
All right, I want to pass this back to you guys. I'm going to give 2 really, really tangible examples for what Isaac is talking about very quickly for your questioning skills and how you really, really put this into place to help people. So this past week, well, today's Friday, but this week, 2 examples. Number 1, one of the clients we work with, very large financial institution, and we do a lot of marketing for them. We'll help them with different initiatives and campaigns that they have. This is where questioning skills and really thinking for your client will put you ahead of competition. So one of the things that I asked in the meeting is we're designing this new campaign. They have an initiative to sell this certain product. And I said, okay, I'm really interested here. And one of the things was whether it had to do with loans, right? So one of the things is here in North Carolina, you have the beach or the mountains, right? If people are going to purchase property, they're going to want a mountain house or they're going to want a beach house. Well, specifically for this type of loan, they can't build on it for 5 years, right? So it's got to be somebody who's thinking long term. And I said to myself, all right, well, we were talking with the client. They said, yeah, we could do beach or mountains. I don't know, just pick an image that might make sense for this campaign or go down a path creatively that has beach or mountains for North Carolina. And I said, in my mind, all of a sudden, wait a minute. Sure, I could go think I'm cool and design a cool campaign and not ask any questions about the visuals of this campaign. Or I had this idea, and this is when you really think proactively for your clients and you've worked in an industry. I said, hey guys, I just want to ask a cool question on this call. Do you guys find that you get more loans for people who want beach houses or people who want mountain houses? And there's a reason I'm asking, because it's very different to have an image of a campaign that's a mountain, landscape, beautiful view out in Asheville, or somewhere that's at the beach. And I said, we could go 2 ways with this. And I asked another question. So I'm baking another question here. Which do you get more loans of is one question. Which do you want more loans in? And do you see a higher value to close those deals more quickly and effectively that gets revenue into the institution? So I asked 2 questions. The CEO sat back and he said, that's a really good question. Nobody's ever asked that before. I'm going to go ask our CRO because yeah, we should inform the campaigns with a visual image that helps us get more ROI. I don't know what the image is going to be. We didn't get anything that moves that forward right now. They're going to work on that and find that information, and now we're going to make a data-based decision, not a database, but data-informed decision.
Yeah, data-driven, yeah.
to actually have a campaign that might hit a higher target market that closes more business with them.
And it establishes trust.
That's what they care about.
They want trust at the end of the day. They want to know that you have their best interests at heart.
That's questioning. That's actually thinking through and saying, wait a minute, I got questions, because you don't know, right? Second one and last one. I was on a really great call with a young founder who's going to start working with our company on all the basic positioning and branding for her organization, and she had a name that she wanted to use. We did a simple search in the call, asked questions about it, why'd you pick this, etc. We ended up finding out that there is no way this name can ever be used. There are some other legal ramifications to it that nobody was aware of until myself and our head of accounts on the call was able to find out. Well, think about this. By asking those questions, by spending 2 hours in this deep dive session to actually figure out all these pieces with her, millions of dollars have been saved from potential lawsuits, bad PR, all this kind of stuff. So when you ask questions and you actually work with your clients that way, it's not always about I'm giving the revenue side of making them money and saving them money. A lot of times people will pay consultants a high amount of value because of their experience and their questioning skills, so that it saves them, like, on projects. How much money can you save somebody by them not going down a development track that's going to totally, make the project go in the wrong direction? This young lady last night was like, well, I want to build an app. I was like, why? I said, do you have a specific reason? And when we found out, yes, an app is totally a part of the project, but there's so much more we could do before that actually gets her to a revenue model that makes sense and funds her project moving forward, where now we have a really, really awesome plan to actually start working down that. And it actually starts out with deciding the name of the organization. We went back to 0, which is awesome, because now we can actually build it right from the beginning. So I wanted to give 2 practical examples, because when you're thinking about questioning skills, that's how you do it. You can think about how to make more money for your clients and drive revenue and ROI, and then also think about every possible thing to save them money that you've seen in their experience. That's what creates great relationships.
Yeah, if you don't ask those questions and you just go with all of your ideas with the client, it becomes your project, not theirs. And then you're responsible for keeping it forever. So at the moment where you want to do a build, operate, transfer mechanism, I call it, where you build it, you operate it, then you want to transfer it, or if they want to end it at some point, how is that going to be transferred if all of your ideas were put in place and none of theirs were? Mm-hmm. They're going to be like, well, it's like John's now. It's not even theirs anymore. And they're like, well, I can't take this over. And then you get into scope creep, which is an entirely different thing, where all of a sudden they have all these additional things they want that they didn't pay for because it was your idea, not theirs. Mm-hmm. So you have to make your ideas their ideas, and then you have to include them in on everything, which is so annoying in consulting, right? Part of me hates consulting just for that reason, but it's all about how you set the foundation. You have to have a good foundation. It's like building your house on rocks versus the sand. And that's the same thing in consulting. You have to have a good foundation, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be with that client forever. Most of the time, the turnover will be 6 months to a year, depending on what industry you're in. This is just a broad scope. But they have to be on board. If they're not on board, then you're going to get so frustrated. They're going to end up trying to sue you. It's going to be a whole congenital mess, basically.
Yeah. I want to get into sales and consulting. I think a better umbrella term for just those two is persuasion. Mm-hmm. And I think what you guys were saying is in order to actually quote unquote persuade someone, you have to understand what they want and understand their perspective first. And I love, you said that the one way that you can do that and really understand them is ask good questions. And then you were telling your story about how when you did ask that client or the CEO the question, and he sat back and was like, wow, no one ever asked me that before. I feel like that's a perfect way to know that you are asking good questions. If someone really sits back and okay, wow, you never asked me that question, then from your perspective, you're like, okay, I'm doing a good job and I should keep asking questions like that. And it's kind of like this reaffirming bias, I guess. So I'm curious, when you first got into sales, were there any misconceptions you had looking back on now? Obviously you were making hundreds of cold calls a day. I'm sure you made a lot of mistakes, and you probably could have landed a lot more clients now when you first started. So what were some misconceptions where you went into sales and you were making these cold calls, and then how does that kind of changed into consulting?
Assumption. I thought I knew everything. So tonality is very important in a sales conversation. You have to talk to them like they're a human being. It's so easy to go in there and be like, oh, Mr. Prospect, I have all these things that I want to tell you, and I have all these features and all these things, and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, they instantly tune you out. You have 5 seconds when you meet somebody, whether it's virtually or in person, to make an impression, right? And so if I had ChatGPT when I started cold calling, it'd be over. I would have made so much money. Unfreaking believable.
Why is that?
ChatGPT it's not even the best AI out there, but that's a different conversation. It's just the most used because Microsoft invested $10 billion into them, right? And Elon Musk is the co-founder of OpenAI, which I think is interesting. He has his hands on everything.
Yeah.
That's the long-term play for Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to have their own digital currency, too.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to ChatGPT, specifically in sales, it has an unlimited amount of data that it can give to you. It's all about how you ask it questions. It's the same thing as if pretend you're talking to somebody. Take that and pair it with ChatGPT, like you're talking to an actual person. Like, give me good active listening questions to ask this company. It'll give you a whole list of questions.
Yeah.
Like, there's no excuses anymore, gentlemen. It's time to do that. Like, we're here. If it's all about education and knowing the tools that you have. That's the way it was in the Roman times.
Yeah.
You wanted 8 wives, you better work your butt off to get 3, or else you're not going to get the extra 5. But you needed the tools necessary to get the extra 5. That was a really bad example.
Yeah,
but
So basically, to sum it up, trust the AI. Just
trust the AI, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll add one, because obviously with Isaac's and I's background,
And our sponsor is Omega Games.
Yeah. Wow. But yeah, sure, we can sponsor. But what I was, I think the example that you're going for, and I think this is something that I want to touch on specifically, because I think most people can struggle with the two sides of doing sales or things you could learn, and sales or consulting. Isaac's talking about, you have these assumptions, right? Everyone does. Before you do any task or involved in any activity, you always have assumptions, right? First time I was playing baseball, I would watch baseball players and I would see in my mind what I thought was going to be the baseball experience. When you put cleats on and your batting gloves and your uniform and you're holding a bat and you're in the box and those ruts that you got to put your feet in that somebody else has put their feet in, it is not it's an uncomfortable experience. Then you got to figure it out. Then you got a guy throwing this rock at you at a certain speed that moves, and you're like, whoa, this is different than being in the batting cage where everything is flat. I'm in this wide open field. So all of your assumptions are gone. Then it's just pure reaction, and you just got to swing and make contact. And you do it over and over, and the best players, or in any sport, they take thousands of swings outside and in the batter's box, and that's how they get better and better. And my point to that is, one of the things that people can struggle with, and I think this is another area that, for me in my career, and something I like to impart to individuals that are younger in their career, is to be okay with fear. I think fear can be a huge motivator for success if you use it the right way.
Yep.
Assumptions are obviously also good. You have to have certain assumptions to get yourself in your head in the game, right? You'll learn and you'll make more mistakes and you'll use your experiences to get better. For me, early on in sales, I remember it was all just motivated by fear and the fear of rejection. And after you got through that, realizing, wait, it doesn't really matter. This person doesn't have any emotional tie to me. They don't think any more or less of me after they put down the phone if they're not interested. Use the fear in the right way to prompt you to ask better questions. There's no better way to get over fear in a conversation than by asking questions and letting other people talk to you and tell them about yourself. So for me, in my career, I was more motivated by, and this may be because my Enneagram or whatever, but motivated by fear, feelings of saying, hey, am I good enough? Am I worthy enough to be in this situation? A lot of people struggle with imposter syndrome, right? And I never really understood it until I started to really look into it. And then I was like, I could see that from time to time. I don't think it's a huge struggle for me. I think, but everybody has it at time to time. But if you do struggle with it, I totally get it, where you are in a situation and you're like, there's no reason I should be here. I don't deserve this. I think that you should totally get rid of that. If you're in that situation and you got yourself to that point, you deserve to get there because you worked hard. I mean, unless you really feel like or know that there's some reason, if you worked hard to get there, be okay with accepting that. Yeah, you can still have your guard on and say, I want to keep playing the game, doing well, taking good swings. But that motivator for fear should turn into action for you getting better on your skill sets and what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then really making sure that you don't let it cripple you, but fuel you to have the confidence you need to keep succeeding at each stage.
Do you guys want an old school mafia trick?
Sure.
All right, cool. So,
This doesn't have to do with the Roman wives thing, right?
we'll get to that later. Old school mafia trick with talking to people. And I didn't say I was in the mafia, just so people. Pause. When you're talking to people, make it uncomfortable. Not intentionally, but everybody is so quick to have a quick answer nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
They have the best tag talk response that it's bundled up in this artificial bowl of nonsense that makes them seem smart. Doesn't make them smart. If you're really smart, you take time to process, right?
Steve Jobs amazing at this on stage.
Jordan Peterson, regardless of what people think of him, I think he's brilliant. Watch any of his podcasts or interviews when somebody asks him a question, he doesn't automatically respond. He takes a second and he thinks. He's like, And if you're on a sales call and somebody asks you a question, you're just looking at him, oh man, the game of chess has begun.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you've automatically stepped into a new pool that they weren't expecting you to step in. Oh my gosh, this guy's actually a critical thinker. He actually has something to say. But he's formulating, he's digesting, he's thinking it through. Even in debating. If you look at Ben Shapiro, for example, or if you look at some of the greatest debaters alive today, they're not so quick to respond that they have nothing to say. A lot of people think that just filling empty space makes me smart. Makes you dumb. And mafia bosses, going back to the mafia reference.
A lot of ancient Rome here.
Yes, the Gambinos. I'm obsessed with mafia stuff. Okay.
Whoa.
I'm
Okay,
obsessed.
Omega Games is not sponsoring that comment.
I'm obsessed with the psychology around mafias. Because if you go back and you really look at the mafia and how they were organized and how it was all about family for them, regardless of the crimes and all of that stuff that they did as a result. I'm talking purely psychological. The way that they communicated with people that they wanted to do business with was very calculated, very slow moving. Not slow moving can be really good, right? Because you take your time to digest what somebody's saying, because when somebody says something, they're not just saying something direct to you in one way. It has multiple meanings. If you can take those multiple meanings and package it into something that's digestible for them and a question, you add a couple zeros to the end of your net worth because you automatically become more valuable to them. One question can change your life. One contact can change your life. One interaction can change your life. If you see your life that way and you ask good questions, you slow down. I call it slackening. Look it up. Google it. Slackening. Where it's the art of slowing down and calming yourself and saying, let me just take up residence in this moment in life and just take a moment. When you do that,
Well,
to the moon.
I completely agree. I think I'll add one statement to this. I have always believed, and a great mentor of mine had told me this phraseology years ago, that success is consistency over time. It's a mathematical equation. Yep. The consistency over time, meaning that is your measure and level the output of success. So maybe we can leave you with this, today. Think about that. Think about how consistent you are, not how successful you are or want or need to be, but your amount of consistency spread out over the time that you have will equal your output of success. And I think if a lot of people thought about it that way, would change their life, it would change the world. I think it would make a huge difference. So
you guys want to pause it real quick?
Yeah, thank you guys for having us on today. This has been it's been great.
Yeah, if this isn't the end of the show, then we appreciate everyone listening. If it is, then we'll see y'all next time. All right, so to wrap up here, we've been talking a lot about like sales and persuasion and marketing and technology we kind of really haven't gotten into yet. So I'm curious, like, what is the biggest challenge that you guys have seen as far as introducing new people into this space of new technology? So like, how do you apply these same techniques that we've been talking about this whole show into teaching them at the same time about this new technology? So I guess we'll start with you, John, and Isaac can add on anything that he sees necessary.
Language. The biggest challenge that the blockchain, Web3, crypto, whatever you want to call it, is literally the three things that I just said: blockchain, Web3, crypto. The communication challenge in this industry to regular individuals is so vast right now that most people can't even get into this industry because they can't even get past the terminology and phrases. And then what ends up happening is you have somebody who's really smart, understands it, and starts using simple terms like, Node.js or JSON and this kind of stuff that we're like, oh, I totally get it. And we're just like, we're right into it. But I think that I believe this industry will cross the chasm to the regular user, to the regular end user or individual, when we figure out how to clearly and accurately describe in relatable terms the goals of what we're trying to achieve. Like if I say to someone, Bitcoin is peer-to-peer cashless transfer that succeeds against the fiat currency system, I think most people's eyes just started to bleed.
Right over the head.
But if I say free the money, free the world, well, now people are kind of interested in what that means. Well, what does it mean to free the money? What does it mean? I want to free the world. Well, if I say Bitcoin as a digital currency provides an ability for someone in a developing nation to get out from underneath the restrictions of a governmental system that wants to stop transactions in a free and open society, well, people might actually listen to that and be like, he might be a little philosophical, but I could ask a couple of questions about that.
That's a lot more digestible.
So I think that's the biggest thing, is if we can solve the language barrier that our space right now on the technology side has with delivering a message, we will get a flood of users to our space that will actually overwhelm us and force us to maintain that educational structure as we continue to iterate, evolve, and develop on that technology.
Let's take it back to the early 1990s.
Is that more mafia talk?
I never know where he's going with this stuff, and then I
why.
wonder about.
We are on a podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to say, but lots of words, but less time. Take it back to the 1990s. When email came out, nobody understood how it worked, and they still don't on the back end, the tech side, right? Same with Amazon. When they came to the market, Jeff Bezos said, I'm going to take the traditional library system and put it on its head, and you can buy books online. People were like, why would I do that? I can just go to the library. Now, if you invested in Amazon $5,000, you'd be worth $60 million right now. Pretty good return. Amazon early 2000s went down 85%. So it crashed. Everybody was freaking out. Oh, it's a scam. No. That's how markets work. That's how technology works. You know it's going to hit mainstream adoption when you don't know the technology behind it, but you use it in your everyday life. That's blockchain.
Absolutely.
Okay? Nobody knows how email works, but they still log into their Gmail and they sell their data to big tech, and they don't care because it makes their lives easier. Once blockchain is behind supply chain, once it's behind enterprise systems, once it's behind the way we do commerce and trade with each other. Yes, Bitcoin is great, but most people don't even know what Bitcoin is. They hear these buzzwords. They're like, oh, what is Bitcoin? Very simply, it's digital gold. It's not a currency, in my opinion. Okay, a currency is, at its fundamental cause and causation, is the ability to expand and contract based off supply and demand. Think of a rubber band, right? If my rubber band can expand and contract based off of the amount of people that use it, sell it, buy it, or trade it, then I'm a currency. The dollar did that when it was backed by gold in the early 1900s, 1950s, 1960s. Then they decided, we're going to take control and we're going to go away from the gold standard. We're going to say, you got to trust me as the government that I have your best interest at heart and that when you trade your dollar and you're actually going to get something. Every year since that, the dollar has lost value because there's nothing backing it up. Gold is backed by a promise that if I can trade my gold bar in, that I'm going to get value for it, right? It's a commodity. Bitcoin is digital commodity. You can store it, you can send it. If John's in South Korea and he's on a yacht with a bunch of famous people, talking about marketing, and he needs to buy a drink or sangria or whatever he drinks, I can send him Bitcoin in 5 minutes for a very small transaction fee instead of doing a Western Union transfer, all of these different things. So it's only as good a use case as your problem. So in the U.S., it's not a big problem because we have all these things like Cash App, Venmo. But once those technologies become obsolete and they're working on the blockchain with less fees. So for example, I'll give you an example of a merchant. I run a local business here. I run let's say a gas station or like a food pantry service. Every time that somebody transacts with me with a credit card, I get charged 3 to 5% fee for that transaction. And there's a 90-day clawback period where if they don't pay their credit card bill, I could get charged back, right? What does that do for a merchant for liquidity? That doesn't give me the option to be able to grow my business as fast because I'm waiting for the credit card issuers to pay me my money, right? That I was rightfully owed for giving a service. And I'm getting 3 to 5% charges. That really, like you're making $100,000 a month, which most businesses do. You're paying $3,000 to $5,000 a month to those credit card issuers, right? Bitcoin and blockchain says, what if we did that in a way with the technology under it to where I don't have to pay those fees anymore? I don't have to give refunds. On the blockchain, when you do a transaction, it is instant and it's immutable, which meaning that there's no clawbacks. I don't have to issue a refund. Once that money goes through, it goes through, and it's in your wallet immediately, right? That's the difference in the technology, but you can take that technology, you can put it in any industry. You can put it in supply chain. You can put it in a winery, for example. The grape on the vine from the grape to the bottle can be tracked now on a publicly available ledger, which banks use it. If I was going to send you, Sam, $5 on Cash App, right? We both have Cash App. We use it all the time, Venmo. You have to wait 3 days to get that money in your bank account, or you can do an instant for a fee. What happens is there's always an intermediary between me and you, which is a bank. They write it down on a ledger and they say, Isaac sent Sam $5, right? In that process, they have a public record saying that this happened. On the blockchain then replaces the bank, saying, you and I decided to do commerce between each other. I'm sending you value. It's publicly available for anybody in the world to see, and all of these computers vote on that transaction and push it through. That's what blockchain is in and of itself. But like John was saying with the technology side of it, the more complicated we make it, the less adoption we're going to get. If all of these things are running on the blockchain eventually, you're not going to know that it's running on the blockchain. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make your commerce easier. It's going to make travel easier. And if I can go anywhere in the world and purchase something with my phone and I don't need a bank account, what does that do for countries and third world countries? Mm-hmm. Most people that I know when I was in Mozambique and these indigenous tribes, none of them had bank accounts. They all had phones. They lived in a mud hut, but they had a smartphone. How crazy is that? So what does that mean for crypto? What does that mean for blockchain? I can literally have my phone as a bank now. I'm stepping out of the traditional system and I'm saying I can do transactional value between anybody in my community by just sending them Bitcoin or sending them USDC or USDT. That is massive. That's why the U.S. is falling behind right now, because we're in our high horses and we think that we have the best thing in the world. But these developing countries, and let's say Ghana or Sub-Saharan Africa and Mozambique, they're growing at an immense rate because they don't have to worry about all these ancillary technologies holding them down. They can become their own bank instantly, and they can start doing commerce, creating businesses, whatever. So that's my 2 cents on the tech side. Like, it has to be adopted in a way that's digestible for people to understand.
Yeah, and I think the prime example of that is if you look at like Central and South America, Binance is just taken over.
Yeah.
And that's why it's the most used chain in the world, is because for that exact use, they're all able to adopt it and use it so seamlessly, where it's such a better option.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess as we wrap up here, thank you guys again for coming on. If you guys have any like books, videos, people that you guys want to like hand off to the audience.
Let's combine this with the goal question too, because I guess we got to ask that question too, right? And it's what is one goal that you have, and then what are the steps that you're doing to achieve goal? I know, John, you answered this, so we'll let Isaac take the turn this time, and any books or resources you have, like Sam was saying.
Yeah, so resources right off the back would be Banking on Bitcoin on YouTube. It's a free documentary. If you want to learn more about Bitcoin, blockchain technology, it's a very good intro for beginners, even if you don't know anything. It will teach you what the technology is, how it was started. I always believe in anything you get involved in, whether it's an investment, whether it's a technology, you need to understand it before getting involved. So I don't give financial advice, but for my own life, I never invest in something I don't understand, because that opens you up to a wide range of things that you can't control at that point. I want to be able to control my investment life cycle of what I do, whether it's investing in technology, whether it's investing in people. If I was to hire Sam, for example, as an employee or as a partner, I need to understand Sam before I hire him, because I need to know what makes him tick, what motivates him, what helps him to get out of bed in the morning, because that makes me a better manager, right? When it comes to my goals and what gets me out of bed in the morning, purpose, vision, mission, legacy, is helping people to be better. Growing a team and seeing their eyes light up when they get a concept, or when they make their first sale and they get that check in the mail, or they get that Bitcoin in their wallet for the first time, and they're so excited about it that their eyes light up and they're like, oh my gosh, this could be a career for me. I could like get married and have a family and be stable and have all the things that I want to have and have that success and that fulfillment. That's really exciting to me. Money is just a result of value being driven to the people in your community. If you provide value, money will never be a problem. That's what people don't understand in this microwave culture that we have. Not everything, if I could have a hamburger or a filet mignon, which one am I going to choose? The hamburger at McDonald's will come in 2 minutes. I'll get it quick, and then I'll feel like crap for the rest of the day because I just loaded my body with sodium and sugar. Or I could wait for 20 minutes, eat a steak, and just feel the protein just going in. You know, it's amazing. It just makes me come alive inside. But that is what drives me, man. It's like super important. You can't my final thoughts would be, don't cut corners. It's so easy in this world we live in to cut corners, to try to figure out the fast way to get around things and skip steps. The steps are there for a reason. The people that you surround yourself with are there for a reason. Never discount the small conversations. Never discount the impact that you can have from one conversation. Because what that does is it has a lineage effect and what we call the butterfly effect. Good movie, Ashton Kutcher. Check it out.
Great film.
It has an effect on your psyche, your economics, the way you look at life, and the way that you present yourself. If you can look somebody in the eye and say, I can help you, you better believe that you can, because they're counting on you. And you know this since we have employees.
Yeah.
Those people count on you. There's an added pressure to that. But if you can manage the pressure in a way that makes sense for you, you're going to be a really good spot. Those are my thoughts.
No, I mean, I completely agree with everything Isaac said. I want to touch on the last point that I would mention. We asked about books, and I think one book that has changed my professional career, and I now as I've gotten longer in my career, I've realized that, first of all, I wish when I was your guys' age and in college that I had some of these resources, and I don't even know if they were really readily available back then, because there was a lot of research done in this in the mid 2000s, right around the time, and a lot of stuff came out right after I graduated. But I think the DISC profile, DISC, has been around for a little bit of time. But there was a book written called Taking Flight, and it focuses on a narrative storyline around the 4 DISC profile types, anthropomorphized into 4 types of birds. And I'll let you guys take a look at the book. And it's a really fascinating story that really helps you understand DISC is specifically made for the professional environment, understanding the different ways that people interact on teams based on their inherent traits. And all traits are good, and you actually need all 4 traits on a team to be successful in any venture. It is so fascinating. You need every single one of those traits, and the teams that don't, you can spot it immediately. The reason I share this book is because I actually think this also bleeds over into your personal life. I actually don't think that we, in America potentially, we've always had this separation between, your business or professional life and your personal life. And something you've always mentioned, that these are always interconnected, and they obviously have to be. Your persona, your inherent traits don't actually change when you have an interpersonal relationship outside of business. You just maybe react differently, but you don't realize that from your agency perspective as a person, you're that same person when you go into the office or when you go home or when you interact with, your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever it is, or whatever, experience you have, just as much as interacting with a boss, a mentor, someone that you've just met on the street. It doesn't matter. So understanding the differences in your personhood and personality traits around something as simple as DISC profile, and there's many facets to different people, will help you to, again, be a better communicator. And that's what I keep going back to, is language, and understanding that individuals, when you're communicating with them, you need to adopt and understand their communication style, which will help you to be more effective as a leader in any area. It doesn't mean you have to be the leader of the team, but anytime you are speaking, you are taking a leadership action to present information and data to somebody else. And if you just say it the way you want to say it, your effectuality of getting that point across, or actually affecting change in whatever that scenario that you want to have, will be that much more reduced without you understanding how the other individual is going to accept and process that information. So I would recommend Taking Flight. It's on Amazon. I think you could probably get it over there. It's a great book. If you're interested in getting more into DISC profile, that's something you can explore. I'd recommend having a mentor who understands how to help you with that. You can find some of the easy tests online. But I liked the book because I thought it really helped to reframe, at least for me, visual pictures with these types of characters really helped to reframe how we engage with each other, and understanding that we're not all the same, and that our differences are actually strengths and benefits to the overall team development. So take a look at that book. Happy to, obviously when you guys get in touch with everybody on the podcast, we can answer those questions and we can go down the road. We could talk a whole podcast on DISC and understanding people's motivations and the achievement cycle. So I thank you guys. This has been great.
Yeah,
This
thanks
is
for
awesome.
having me.
This is awesome. I think you'll definitely be back on. Like you said, either the DISC profiles, and he opened up a whole nother can of worms with currency and Bitcoin and blockchain.
Oh, yeah.
That we haven't really touched on at all with either of you guys on the show. So I think all 4 of us would love to talk about that too. So yeah, we're looking forward to having you guys back on. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Catch you next time.